W contract, we're not quite ready to dive into that. We're still waiting for the DPW.
I spoke with Superintendent Goff earlier today, and he had indicated that the membership is convening on Monday, also a week from yesterday, to ratify the contract or not. And at that point, we will have something actionable to put in front of you.
Okay. And we have the appointment to the Berkshire Regional Transit Authority. Let's talk about this. We should have an appointment, but we don't have a candidate at this point in time. Ed and I were just talking about that, and we agree, and I'm sure the rest of you would too, that this is an opportunity for somebody to really work for the town of Lenox and our resorts and our cultural activities. That Ed and I feel that this would be somewhere where somebody can really make a difference, and so we need a candidate. So if anybody out there is interested in this job, it doesn't take a lot of time. It takes some initiative, some independent thought, and we would appreciate it if you give your name to Mary Ellen, or any one of us. You can get a hold of one of us. We'd love to chat with you. So if you want to be our designee for the Berkshire Regional Transit Authority, please get in touch with us. Anybody want to add to that? Ed, you want to add to that?
Well, it's the same as we were just talking about earlier. It really is an important position. You know, I was on it for a year. Mary Beth was on it for a year or 2 years or whatever.
Oh.
And but we need somebody. We need to tap into our resorts, those type of places that need help. They need personnel, and the personnel may live in Pittsfield, and there's no buses that run on a Saturday or Sunday or night or anything like that. So if somebody with the passion to work in that area, to help out in that area, I think it'd be great. I think I could, envision, something that works for everybody. The people that need transportation and the resorts that need people that have transportation. It's more important than you think it is.
We have a lot of people that also come from the Pittsfield area who work at Kimball Farms, and they stop at Town Hall and they have to walk back to the assisted living facility. I believe there's a stop at Kimball Farms if they have people who are activity folks who work at the residential facility. I know for a fact that there is someone on the Stockbridge Selectboard that when he sees people walking, he knows that there are some people that are going to Kripalu, and he'll pick them up and take them to Kripalu from the Lenox bus stop because, there aren't intermittent stops along the way. This is a very important position. It's a weighted, there's a weighted vote structure. So Lenox, they actually reconfigured all the votes about a year ago, the weight structure, and so we have like 4.34 votes against Pittsfield's 19 votes and Lee's 3 votes and Great Barrington's 7 votes. So it's important. I mean, we have some heft in this. It's an important position. There's a little too many things on my plate right now to cover this. I've been covering this for the last couple of years, but it is very engaging and it's very important. I echo what you both have said.
I remember from my time on it, we always found, it's a political thing, and most of the money goes in the Boston area. It doesn't come here. It's really frustrating. And but there are other people working on this in the community. You don't remember his name? Tad, somebody from Great Barrington.
Tate Coleman.
Tate Coleman.
Yeah, and he's just left for UMass.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
young guy, but he was very energetic with this kind of thing.
He's actually gotten a regional transportation grant for Great Barrington that is specific to Great Barrington. They're starting an Uber-like project so that people can get on-demand transportation down there. And I also believe that Smitty got a similar grant for Lenox and Stockbridge. So there's going to be the opportunity to do sort of a little pilot program in this area as well. But again, we really need somebody who wants to be engaged in this particular project, who has some time to spend. I'm talking 2 hours a month, but it's important. It's really important.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, well, let's toss it around ourselves and see if we can't come up with some thoughts. I have a couple thoughts, but they're certainly not ready to be broadcast at this point in time.
I have a question about
Oh, sure.
the process. Oh, jeez, I just said no. With these appointments, what are the qualifications or necessities for the appointments? Citizen of Lenox?
Citizen of Lenox.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I don't know what bylaws or what has to change or whatnot, but given the importance of this to our businesses and our businesses struggling for employee transportation, I mean, is this ever something that we could give to the chamber to represent Lenox for and not be necessarily?
That was one of my thoughts. I was going to talk to Jen and see if she thought there was somebody there that could, you know, I mean, even if we have to fund a small dollar amount for transportation or whatever it is, additional funding for the chamber, but get somebody who would be responsible, a responsible person.
Yeah, in the sense that this is almost more of a position than an appointment to a committee.
Yeah.
You know, not that, I don't know if I could eloquate what the difference between those two is, but more like it's a regular job, if you will.
Right.
Well, it's not really, but you could.
It's not, but I mean,
turn
it's
it in
more-
that if you wanted to.
I mean,
You could put as
BRTA
much time as you wanted.
I mean, right now they're having, I mean, we could tell them all the routes we want. They can't get drivers
Right.
to staff what they've got, so that's one of their challenges. But nonetheless, you know, we lack public transportation in Berkshire County as a whole, and we should participate as much as we can as a town.
Yeah,
And I'm just wondering, can we,
okay. That's something we should look into.
Well, that's a good question, you know, what do you need to be, or can we just appoint somebody, anybody, whether they're a resident or not? That's a question, that'd be a good question.
Well, it should be a resident of Lenox. It should definitely be a resident of Lenox. All of
Is
the
that by
meetings.
statute or is that by our desire?
No, I think it's by statute. I mean, it has to
Okay.
be somebody who lives in Lenox and lives or works in Lenox, but I think particularly living in
well, that's a good
Lenox.
question about live or work, because, I mean, I think it affects people's work lives more than it affects their
People
personal
who live
lives.
here.
Right,
We don't need to get to Lenox on a weekend, we're here.
yeah.
Yes, I mean, you know, if you don't mind, I'd like to know specifically the answer to that question, because, and it doesn't have to be the chamber, but to me, it feels like it's kind of in their bailiwick to,
It's a good starting point.
So all of the meetings are online now, or they have been since COVID. So this person can participate from the comfort of their own home. You know, you just have to have a computer, or you can even participate on a smartphone or an iPad. The meetings have been very well run. I don't know who's taking over for the regional transportation group that's part of South County, because we're also part of the regional transportation group that is South County and the regular BRTA, so you're kind of going to two different sets of meetings. But still, it's a couple of hours a month. It's manageable.
Okay. So, Chris, maybe you could get us, specifically me, if anybody else is interested too, just a fact sheet about what it is, what their, as we view it, what would their function be? I mean, I'm sure Mary Beth, having been on it, could write that up as well. So that we're not talking blind, we go in there with some specifics. So if you could look that up for me, I'd appreciate it. And anybody
Yes.
else who wants that as well, maybe we can shop this around. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any further?
no, that's all I wanted to ask.
Good points. Thank you. So now I'm going to go to Chris, and we're going to talk a little bit about our special town meeting coming up.
Yeah. So, it's part of our desire, coming post-pandemic, to get back on a more or less regular schedule with our town meeting cadence, which would call for what we've called our fall special town meeting, or our semi-annual town meeting on November 3rd, which would be a Thursday. Exactly 6 months from the regular annual town meeting, which was, of course, the first Thursday in May. So, thought it would be an opportune time to discuss what the timeline requirements dictate in order to make that happen. So if we were to hold the special annual town meeting for November, on November 3rd, as we did, in years past, the warrant would have to be posted by Thursday, October 20th, because special town meetings, unlike the annual town meeting, require a 14-day posting period as opposed to a 7-day posting period for the annual. So that's the first benchmark we would have to hit, which doesn't seem altogether unreasonable given that we're sitting here on September 7th. But there are a couple things that would have to happen before that, particularly with regard to appropriation requests. We'd have to have an opinion rendered by the Finance Committee on any appropriation articles. Incidentally, their notice period is the same 14 days as ours is for the warrant. So it provided that they could get us their opinion on any appropriations articles prior to the posting date of the warrant, we would be in sync as far as noticing the public and the board on their opinion for any articles that involve money. So that's the calendar that we'd have to meet. We've already put in a facilities use request form with the school department for use of the Duffin for that date. The topics are something that we could certainly broadly start to discuss tonight. Staff has put together a list of some potential topics, in advance of tonight's meeting, in anticipation of further discussion as the next several weeks carry on. Chief among them would be appropriations articles for some of the larger building projects that we've been contemplating for some time. I think that's obvious. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, though there's a lot of work to be done between now and then in order to make that plausible. We've got, as a part of that, we've got some residual items left over, things that either came before and weren't ready or that we couldn't get ready in time for the annual town meeting. There's the quote-unquote puppy mill bylaw that we tabled, that we could certainly bring up something, and I'm confident that staff could have something crafted for you to consider prior to the deadline for posting. There's been an awful lot of discussion around cell coverage bylaws, as well as noise, what folks would call a noise ordinance. It would be a noise bylaw. In the case of Lenox, towns have bylaws, cities have ordinances. Don't ask me why, it's just the way it is. But some sort of noise bylaw, AKA noise ordinance. And then getting back on track with our fall appropriation for spring paving that we'd been pretty diligent about prior to the pandemic, messing up not only bidding but also the calendars for town meetings. So get back on track with our paving appropriations in advance of the winter, so we can bid in winter. And then there's any number of things that we may want to consider that would help shore up the tax rate, because you could have the special town meeting in early November prior to the tax classification hearing. So we can any adjustments that we think we might want to make to the tax rate could be made at the town meeting, so that when we get into classification, to the extent that there are opportunities to create a more advantageous rate structure, we can do that.
There's also 2 off-cycle CPC applications.
Yes. Thank you for that. It wasn't on my list only because I wrote it down today. Yeah, right.
So, I know it's a hard thing to come up with now, but what do you foresee for a number of warrant articles?
Well, I mean, if you just go out here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 8 to 10. Depending on whether you want to consolidate like articles into one versus splitting them.
Okay.
What is the planning board working on that may?
So the planning board is working on sign bylaw and cellular coverage bylaw. Don't know how far along they'll be, if they can have their public hearings in time for their proposals at November. I'll have to have a conversation with our planning board chair about that. I could certainly do that over the next week, or any one of us could, I suppose. But I'm delighted to.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Since we have a little extra time, Ed has a lot of extra time. So Neil too.
Good talk. You're on.
Okay, so I'd just like two things, one of which is Labor Day. Marks usually the end of the very busy tourist season. And anecdotally, through my trips through town, I would say that we had a very busy tourist season. I think it's time to start thinking about two things, one of which is maybe get a postmortem on what our businesses thought. I can certainly work with Jen on that. And secondly, is there something we should be doing to even make it more smooth? I don't know how we're going to fit more people in town, but I do know this, and this is a little bit more than anecdotal. Our visitor is younger than we had originally thought years ago. We've got a lot of young people coming here, and from what I've heard, they're coming mostly to recreate. They enjoy the outdoors, they want to get out of the cities, they're bringing their families, and we are definitely well prepared for the cultural activities, but I'm not sure we're totally prepared for the outdoor activities and for the young people coming into town and families. And I think maybe we ought to spend some of our efforts on defining things that they can do. Again, I'll talk to Jen, see what her thoughts are. Some of this is her thoughts, but and see if there's somewhere we can. We've got our arms wide open right now for the folks that come in, and you talked a little bit about tax classification and tax rates and stuff, and I think this is the time that we have to think about what we're going to do for our residents for the upcoming taxes. And you're going to be hard pressed to move me off the dime that we ought to share some of this with our folks, because most people are going to experience higher utility bills, much higher fuel costs over the course of the next 12 months, and I would not want to burden them with additional real estate taxes. So, if we can start thinking about that in the next week or two, and then have a discussion, I think that's important, because being a resident, like all the rest of you, we do surrender our town for at least 4 months. And the nice thing is that this looked like the season extended. It started a little earlier than it usually did, and with the foliage season coming up, it'll probably end a little bit later too. So, let's see what benefits we can give to our residents who are very welcoming to the tourists and to our business owners. So I just wanted to start that discussion. It doesn't have to happen tonight, but it has to happen, I think. At least I'd like to see it happen.
Can I jump on that?
You certainly may.
Okay. I'm still getting concern about the lack of parking in town.
Yep.
From everyone, especially concern about people who perhaps own businesses in town, parking on the street where they hope that tourists can actually park and enjoy some time, getting in and out of their cars, easily accessible to the vendors they'd like to go see. And that I've heard from at least 3 different vendors that they're really upset about the lack of either timed parking, the fact that people can park on the street for the entire day if they want to. So I know that that is still a concern.
Yep, I got some.
And then regarding your statement about, trying to help people find cool things to do, there is this great app that we worked on through the Lenox Cultural District called Lenox Cultural District, and it's an app that you can get on your phone that will point you to the galleries, a history walk, art and cultural events, Lenox outdoor guides, and that's everything from Mass Audubon Society and where to find the boat ramps and where there are some great hiking trails, etc. Lenox for a day, a selection of activities that you could do with a family for one day. There's a Gilded Age cottage tour and a general shops, walking, and food tour. So there are 7 tours on this great app that you can download when you hit the Chamber of Commerce. It's a free app on Android and on Apple, and I'm happy.
Is that assuming you get cell service?
That is assuming that you get cell service. But it's a beautiful app that we worked up last year, and it's through the Lenox Cultural District, and I would encourage people to download it and use it even as residents.
Right. That remark of mine was a wise guy tongue-in-cheek.
No, that's okay.
No, but
I
that's
just
something
wanted
we
to
have
make
to
it
work
known
on
that
as well.
It's very
there's
real. I
Yes,
mean,
it is.
stuff available.
So, to pick up on that, parking is not a new issue. We've heard about it, season after season, and the busier the season gets, the harder it becomes. And I think we have to expand the conversation to not just, what do we do about the spaces that we have, and think about the supply side of spaces. I mean, do we have ways to create more parking in ancillary areas that people can shuttle from or something? Not just think about timing people or marking tires or whatnot, and like we have in the past. I did hear your comment about recreation, and I do like that app. I've used it, but what I think you were talking about, I don't think really exists, which is, I'm sure someone could put out the Massachusetts Gazetteer and look at all the maps and topos of ponds and lakes or whatever, but there's not really a one-click Town of Lenox places to recreate. Here's the 6 places to kayak, here's the 4 places to go hike for a view, here's the, I can't tell you, since I moved closer to town, how many people stop me in my yard and say, which way to the Kennedy Trailhead, or which way to Stockbridge Bowl, or whatever. And, but I will say, it's already been mentioned, I think overwhelmingly this summer, the most common comment that I got was, what's going on with cell service and why can't I use my phone? And I've got bars, but I can't get a signal. What's going on? So it's not just, it's 2 issues. Coverage for sure,
Right.
but also bandwidth on the coverage that we have is limited. So too many people try to use that same tower. It's a pipe that only has a certain diameter or whatever. Only so many signals can get through, and that's that. And we're gonna have to talk about it at some point in time.
That's well said, yes, I agree. 100%. So, I think we've got a winter season coming up and time to plan.
I'm sorry. I want to also
Sure.
endorse what you said. I feel, and I mentioned this when Chris gave us the great news about the most recent free cash numbers once they were certified, and how the performance was that last quarter that you reported. I believe we talked about, and I mentioned, it feels to me like something ought to be done that affects everybody. We have expensive projects, but not everybody's on, sewer. So, not everybody benefits from that. So
Right.
the idea of something that affects truly every resident in town
Yes. Yeah,
is something I agree with.
thank you. Well, I'm sure we all agree with it, just some, a little more adamantly than others, but, you know, we have a wonderful town, we have great services. I was thinking about that today, you know, I mean, if you had to write a mission statement for the town, I think it would be to provide the best possible services to the residents of the community. And I think that we get high marks in a lot of those areas, certainly emergency services, our schools. I mean, the list, our DPW, our list goes down, all the way down. And I think we get high marks in almost every single category. So I think that part of the mission statement is on target. The other part of that mission statement is without burdening the residents of the community with costs. And I think we've done pretty well on that, but I think we could maybe even do a little bit better. So let's put our heads together over the next couple of weeks and see if we can come to some consensus on that. Make sense?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
What do you mean?
About what you mean by coming to a consensus about doing better.
Oh,
for
like
costs.
let's say, okay, we got a range of saying,
Grants?
are we going to ask our taxpayers for more money this year? Or are we gonna freeze it? Or are we gonna ask them for less money? Somewhere in that range.
Okay.
I mean, thanks to Chris and his forecasting and his hard work, we still have a AAA bond rating. I don't want to ramble on, but I've been to many town meetings where we put the chart on the wall that says this is 2014, and in 2018 we're going to have a problem. Rates are going to go up 5-6%, but we always rise to the occasion and keep that number manageable. We've always have anyway, and I think that I can't recall exactly what last year's chart like that said, but I think we always wanted to make our residents aware of where we were, where we projected we were going to be. A few years ago, or even last year, we were talking about fire and safety. We've been talking about the damn sewer plant forever, and so those are. But you planned for it. You borrowed money to cover those costs at reasonable rates. You've done an outstanding job on forecasting and then working to cover those costs. And I think that we've got to continue to do that. So that's what I meant when I said that.
I think translated, the town's been very fortuitous to have extraordinary tourist revenues and
Yes.
maybe not even just tourist visitor revenues through our businesses, through our shops, through our performance venues and whatnot. And so we benefit from the taxes on those. And we've had, despite Chris's great efforts to keep up with projections, we're exceeding his projections.
Right.
And I think talking specifically about the tax levy is the most clean and direct way to benefit everybody that lives in Lenox for our good fortune. Not just by building things, not just by repairing things, but I think going right to the source.
Agreed. Okay, well, this has been a good discussion.
I haven't said much, but I agree.
You want-
No, I don't have a big no. I mean,
Okay.
we had a whole bunch of different things there, but I think what you're talking about with the taxes and for the residents of, we've been real fortunate, our revenues are up. Think about giving back sometimes, So I think,
Okay.
all these other things you said are great, and we all know them already.
Yeah.
But that's key right there,
Thank you.
I think.
Okay.
Thanks, Ed.
Warren, you have anything you want to throw in there, buddy?
No, I think we're heading in the right direction.
Okay, great, thank you.
Chris, I don't want to put you in a spot, but does it feel like this is meaty enough? You thought about maybe 10 articles and whatnot. I think we have some things that are timely and appropriate for the fall, but I don't want to have a special town meeting, or even if we call it our annual town meeting, and have only 60 people show up and have it feel like,
Right.
we're all banging the drum for our own projects and not getting the real voice of the town.
I think the diversity of articles that the staff has been contemplating, and that, and frankly, that I've heard, feedback from you on, that diversity of interest ought to generate a pretty good cross-section of the citizenry as far as interest goes. But that's my read on it, at least. Happy to be corrected on that, but I mean, when you look at, whether it's wastewater or public safety or hopefully cell service, noise. I mean, there's a lot of people interested in all of those things, and there is not confined to any one particular demographic of the town. And taxes affect all of that, so if anyone who's not captured in, those 4, 5, 6 categories will certainly be captured by the taxation component. So.
Sounds like.
So everyone should go to the town meeting.
You say that, but, I've got a lot of friends, Neil, Ed, Mary Beth, Warren, all have a lot of friends here in this community, and frankly, some of them don't go to the town meetings, and I say, why don't you go to the town meeting? Well, I really haven't got anything to complain about. Things are relatively smooth in the town of Lenox. I mean, we haven't had horribly controversial items in 10 years, 12 years probably.
Participation is tough everywhere.
It is.
Every level.
I mean,
we talk about this all the time. I don't know what the real reason is. Apathy, think of any kind of adjective you want, but
right.
Boy, it's tough to get people to participate. Finding volunteers that
right.
Even they want to show up at town meeting.
Well, the most important reason to come is that, it's your civic duty, and it's a right that we have to exercise. There are a lot of people in this world that can't do what we can do. And the fact that we can decide as citizens where we're spending our money, how much money we're spending on the services that we're getting, as members of this town. We're getting water and sewer, we're getting public safety. You can get better cell service. These are the decisions that the town is making as a community. It's really a great opportunity to engage and to discuss. I wish there were more people that came to these meetings, but I think it's really special that New England still has this form of government, and that's, I think, what makes towns like this so great to live in.
Okay.
It's advanced citizenship. I mean, it's more than casting a vote. You're a legislator when you're at town meeting. That's something that, even in this country with its rich history of democracy, most folks outside of our region don't enjoy when it comes to interacting with their city government or their town government, or certainly at the county level. It's not to be whimsical about it, but it is a pretty special thing when you think about it. And it's the type of thing that needs to be nurtured. Otherwise, it can become lost.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had 600 plus people through the building yesterday before 10 o'clock when I so that's something. I mean, it's obvious why, I think, what the ballots were that they were caring about, but.
Right, you'll get them out if there's something they need to come out for. All right, folks, let's put our thinking caps on and continue our discussion into the next meeting, which is going to be September 28th at 6 p.m. We are not going to go into executive session tonight. We're not necessarily in a position at this point in time. Hopefully we'll be the next time. Mm-hmm. Or if we need to have a special board meeting for executive session, we'll do that as well. You make that call.
Okay.
Actually, I'll make that call. We're going to meet with them, yeah. All right, so anything else before I pound the gavel? I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.